Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. This is Gemini Brett. Now of GeminiBrett.com, I have a new website, and dear gratitude to my dear one, Anna Zaharia, for really making that magic happen. Currently sitting in a Holiday Inn in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And in some regards, I'm looking forward to getting holiday out, but I've been having a really good time here at the Great Lakes Astrology Conference where I presented yesterday, and tomorrow I will have an all-day workshop focused on finding hidden superpowers in our charts and bringing some of the light out of the shadow that is often disguised behind the veil of the so-called inconjunct aspects. Well, that's a nerdy start. I'm here to speak with you for a short time. Let's see, it's 8:17 p.m. local time, and I'm going to do a sky teaching for folks that are still here after the conference has ended. Many of them doing my workshop tomorrow, so we're going to do a little feet in the grass sky teaching outside tonight, which is for me where these mysteries most come alive and become very much a intimate, personal, even familiar connection. So before we get into the charts to talk about this eclipse, there's a few powerful words that I will invoke here, I guess, and just want you to sit with these words and feel into what do they mean for you? What did they used to mean? What do they mean now? What is the dream of what they should mean? And the words are home, home, family, family, safety, trust, shelter, hearth, tenderness, feelings. So those are a lot of words. And why do I mention those words? Home, family, safety, trust, shelter, feelings, tenderness. Hearth is another wonderful one. And the reason why, of course, is because the coming total solar eclipse this Tuesday, July 2nd, 2019, 3:16 p.m. Eastern time. All right. I reside typically in Pacific time in California, where it will be 12:16 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesday, July 2nd, a total solar eclipse in the sign of Cancer. Right. And this archetype, this mystery school, this magical energetic of Cancer speaks to us of home, speaks to us of family and safety, trust, shelter, hearth, feelings, tenderness. And so let's look at this chart together, and we'll get into some of the planetary placements. This is Astro Gold software. And I've cast this for Washington, D.C., because it's a thing that we do when we study eclipses from a mundane, sometimes political or geopolitical level. But I have also cast this without a local ascendant. And so 0 Aries is over here. This is what we call the natural chart wheel, right? And many astrologers will compare this sign of Cancer to the 4th house, because this is how it lays out on the 0 Aries or the natural chart wheel. And there's a really good reason why this works on like a global level or earthly level, right? I'm wearing a tree, right? This is like the world tree. And this is a very important eclipse for that perspective of the world axis, the directions, the compass, the world tree we all share, the sword and the stone, the sword of our stone, as I like to call Earth's axis of rotation, right? the primary motion of our day. I mean, what is the greatest astronomical, and I would suggest therefore the greatest astrological experience? It is day and night. So this eclipse here, 10 degrees and 37 minutes Cancer, will live in your own nativity, in your own birth chart, you know, in a particular way. For me, I have Gemini on the rise, and Cancer is my second sign. So we say this eclipse is in my second house, which is about many things. The standard transmission you hear is about your money, you know. But for me, the second is about that which feeds your soul, right? But you might have it in the 7th house of relationship. You might have it in the 10th house of visibility, legacy, career. You might have it in the 11th house of family. We're more like circles and groups. Family tends to represent more in the 4th house. And why do we say that, right? And why do we say this also about the Cancer archetype? Well, the natural chart wheel, this wheel where we put 0 degrees Aries at the kind of collective ascendant, is the chart wheel that is most tuned into the directions. And really, the signs in this regard are like Earth's houses, like the houses for the whole globe. And the reason why it works is this. East is the place of the rise, of new beginnings. And this degree of the zodiac, 0 degrees Aries, where Pisces becomes Aries, is due east of the center of Earth at all times. Where is Earth on the chart wheel? Some draw it across from the sun. That's the shadow of Earth. The Earth is the center of the wheel. This is the cross of matter inside the circle of spirit, which is how we describe the Earth in the Earth glyph, right? So the circle of spirit, that's sun. That's where the sun lives. And that's called the ecliptic plane, or we'll just call it, for the sake of time, the zodiac here, okay? Matter is this world, right? And I will argue that matter, which implies time and space, is necessary for the growth of the soul, right? So on a higher level, we are the one, we are the circle. But we here have a personal eminence in the particular, right? As a radius, as a ray of that circle, each in our own way. So we are the one, that's the circle, and we are one the, that's the radius of the circle. And if any one of the gazillion infinite possibilities radii grows, the whole circle does. So that's what we're here for. We are spirit reflected through soul into matter. So here in these crazy monkey suits with a human heart, right, we can feel and heal and know and grow personally. And our personal growth gives the gift of the growth to the all. I mean, the all, the one thing in and of itself, like inherently can't grow because it's already everything. And yet it will never stop growing. It will never stop expanding because of miracles like you. People who are choosing to consciously walk their path despite the difficulties, right? So the 0 Aries degree of the zodiac is always due east of the center of Earth, right? I want you to do this, please, with me. Reach your hands to the top of the sky. So you're not sitting where I am right now. You are pointing to a different star above your head. You might be listening to this at a different time than I'm recording this. You are pointing to a different star in the sky, right? But if we draw a line down through our spines, we will all meet together in the center of the Earth. And this is why we measure astrology from that place, though, of course, it's not where we live, dwell, and can witness the heavenly happenings, right? But the center of the Earth is the place where all earthlings are connected, right? And so we're speaking in the sense of the soul, the one soul of the one thing, of our shared experience of matter, of Earth, yeah? And again, 0 Aries is due east of the center of the whole world in every moment, time. And east itself is the direction of the rise of new beginnings. So what is north, right? And this is the sword of our stone, Gaia's spine. The spin axis is always leaning north-south. The sun just found its way to the northern lean, and that's when the sun ingressed Cancer, the tropical zodiac. That's when the sun is due north of the center of the Earth. So I'm going to speak northern hemisphere here, mostly for the sake of time. But let me just say this, that when in the northern hemisphere, the sun is due north every day, It is exactly halfway between sunset and sunrise. And this cusp of the fourth house, we call the imum celi, right? The bottom of the heavens, which sounds a lot like hell, but it's from that place in the midst of the night, a cold and wet place where the sun begins its daily climb to rise in the east and eventually culminate in the northern hemisphere. The sun culminates at midday, halfway between sunrise and sunset due south, right? And then we'll set in the west, and halfway between rest and rise, the sun roots down here. So we often speak about astrology this way: Aries to Taurus to Gemini to Cancer, etc. First house to second house to third house to fourth house, etc. But so much of the essence of the delineation that we utilize as astrologers, and many, I'll say unknowingly, comes from the solar motion this way, the daily motion. And the sun rises into the 12th and then moves from the 11th and the 10th to climb to its highest height of the day. So there's this kind of sense clockwise, which in the kind of modern astrological thought seems very backwards or retrograde. And it's not that, but it's a different thing. So what is it? I want you to feel into this essence of the middle of the night. And this is one amazing thing about a total solar eclipse, right? I can tell this is a total solar eclipse because moon and sun are meeting for new moon, as they do every month, and so close to a lunar node, this Rahu, the north lunar node. That is where, from Earth's point of view, the moon crosses the path of the sun, as it does up and down every month. It's where it crosses the path of the sun moving north. A beautiful, and I can tell also, I should say, that this is a total solar eclipse because the moon is big at this time. And how I can see that on an astrological chart, it is opposite, not exactly opposite, but it's on the opposite side of the zodiac from what we call true black moon Lilith. And when we look through that point, that kind of pointless point, not to say it doesn't have a point, but a place that no body exists. When we look through that place in the sky, we are finding our way to the place of the lunar orbit that is furthest from the Earth. And for me, that is a place where soul is a little bit less embodied, less connected to matter, more connected to the one thing, to spirit. Whereas the opposite place of Lilith is where the moon is closest, biggest, brightest, fastest, okay? And because the moon is close to that opposition point for this solar eclipse, right? New moon meeting so close to one of these nodes, and it's a big moon, so it's much more likely to fully eclipse the sun, and this one absolutely will. And that's an amazing thing because it brings some darkness to the daytime, doesn't it? My own personal metaphor for a total solar eclipse like this is it's like walking into a black-lit club. And suddenly you see like stains on your shirt you wouldn't otherwise, that you don't see in the light, right? Well, you're going to leave that club and go back into the regular light, and those stains won't be seen anymore. But what is it that now you've seen them? I mean, should you choose to rinse them out and do the wash, or just forget about it because nobody else can see them anymore? Eclipses, in a sense, are like this. They open portals and accelerated portals of understanding, of seeing, of knowing, if we choose not to hide from them, right? In this entrance into the dragon, the portal of darkness, we can find the essence of higher light and higher understanding of what this is to be a soul embodied in matter. Yeah, and we can see in this marriage of sun, moon, and earth, which certainly an eclipse is, and visibly so, we can see this alignment of these three parts of the philosophy of the whole world, in the words of Hermes: spirit, soul, and matter. Represented astronomically, sun, moon, and earth, and these lunar nodes are where those three are always in syzygy and always in alignment. And it's most activated because it becomes visible in an experience like this, a solar eclipse, and especially a total solar eclipse, which aren't entirely rare, but don't happen every month, that's for sure. We tend to have 2 eclipse seasons a year when the sun is either at the north node as it is now, or about 6 months later when it's at the south node. So we'll have eclipses again in December. So let's just tune in to the eclipse in Cancer, in the sign of Cancer. All right. Before I do, I guess let's work our way there, and we'll start at the 12th house. This is the place where the sun rises, okay? But it's also the stars of the 12th house of your chart are the last ones that will reach and rest and root and rise again, right? And the 12th house, those stars were rising before your birth when you were in the womb. And just actually as that womb was becoming pretty hectic, right? As that circle itself was kind of compressing in a linear way to push you out into this weird world, right? Into this cross of matter. There's so much we say about the 12th, like hidden things and how we undo ourselves and other kind of trippy statements is associated actually with like insane asylums and prisons and all sorts of kind of heavy stuff. It's, my workshop actually tomorrow is to embrace some of that and heal some of the, I think, negative connotations of these delineations. But very importantly, it is a place where we are still connected to the dream of unity, which is the real dream. Yeah. It's important that we focus on our individual experience of selfness, right? That's one of the principal things we are here to do. But to give that gift of our own growth to the one thing is also the role, right? So this place of the ascendant, the east rises. Why? Because Earth falls in that direction. You see, we incarnate into matter so we can lift spirit up. And basically, as soon as we are born, we are inherently disconnected from that oneness. This is part of it. This is part of the soul incarnating, drinking from the pool of Lethe, forgetting where we've done, what we've done in the past, where we've been, who we've been, right? So we can really, like, it's like, now I'm going to Brett, whatever that means. I'm here to figure that out. And then maybe at some point, figure out that I'm meant to forget that so I can return to the one. I think that is best in many regards reserved for the time of death, right? Because we really do want to live our unique and our individual life, but it's important that we reconnect to that dream, that truth of oneness, yeah? So in many regards, the signs of the zodiac are like reactions to the signs that preceded them. So Pisces, and this is a true connotation for the 12th house as well, it's very connected to that unity consciousness, that dream consciousness, and that can be a very beautiful and very spiritual and mystical thing. And that can go south as well, because obviously, you know, in our modern times, we typically lack spiritual training and connections to the totality. And so some ways that we will try to connect just look through like a empathic overload that can just quickly lead towards martyrdom or shutdown, or, you know, trying to get to that feeling, that somatic experience of oneness through inebriation, drugs, or leaning there just to avoid the pain that we feel in the world. And there is a lot of pain in the world. And that's part of the stimulation for individual, for familiar, for platonic, for, you know, relational, for national, for global growth. But it's not necessarily even knowing that something that we can know to the point where it brings, you know, entire ease with the pain of the human condition, yeah? Pisces, because it's so in the 12th house, because it's so interesting connecting to that oneness and leaning back and looking back through that veil to escape this idea in a sense of like the particular experience. Aries must react to that and say, no, actually, I'm going to focus on selfness. And it's very important not to say this is selfish. That's too sadly, too often transmitted, and I think by astrologers, okay? Selfness. We speak about Libra as relationship. Libra is one side of relationship. That's othership. We must balance othership with selfness to meet in the middle way of right relating, isn't it? Yeah. That quest of selfness, we can see in a way would salt a wound of the quest for oneness. And this is how the zodiac works. I mean, once we get to Taurus, in a sense, or the second house, it's like the umbilical cord is cut. And now suddenly I need someone else to even eat and survive and receive food and care and all those things. Yeah. And we, even in that truth of needing another, are reconnecting to the truth of oneness. And yet we are now pouring salt on a wound that was opened in the quest for selfness, right? Because I'm not completely independent, right? I mean, I'm not making all of my food and all that and all my care, and I require love and touch and right? So we'll see this with the zodiac as we move through. I'll just say that for me, Taurus second, there's a deeper spiritual intent or wish of this place that is about what feeds my soul. And that actually allows for the selfness experience, because what feeds my soul will be different than what does for you. And astrologically, I'll look to the cusp of the second house in the chart. I'll look to a planet associated with that cusp, planets that are in that second house and their alignments with other beings, etc., to really tune into uniquely to what is it that feeds this person's soul, because there's so much of our drive that's there. And so people speak about money with the second house. Well, it puts food on the table, or values, which is a really actually important reflection of that which feeds my soul and my quest. Yeah. It's difficult for us to tune into the truth that we do have needs, because we are told it is better to give than receive. And we're basically told that receiving is taking. So it's very difficult for us to drop into the truth that we have needs and to learn to communicate those needs, which is really what the third place inherently is about. So it has many connotations, right? But that's the root, that's the pain and pleasure point that is mostly stimulating the quest of learning, of language, of communication, etc. Okay. You'll see that, just dream into the truth that we were all babies who needed mother's milk, or needed a source of, nurture and nutrient outside of ourselves. And we had to learn to communicate. I mean, think about the baby learning some kind of language that makes sense to a mother, because here we're just wailing and don't have words yet. And this amazing psychic connection between mother and child to determine whether that particular cry means food, or hold me, smother me, or leave me alone, or whatever. But that ability to learn communication really requires this truth that I'm not alone here. And not only am I not alone, and it's not only that I have needs that I need to learn to express, but I have to honor this other person has needs. So we have to find ways to communicate in agreement and find some of these win-wins, A way that Cancer, I think, can cause pain in a sense, or is a reaction to just that communication, is to say, okay, yeah, it's actually not just about you and another person. There's family, there's mannerisms, there's manners, and this is how you don't just say, Mom, milk. You say, Mom, can I please have some milk? I'm hungry. And that idea is on a wider level culture. Do you see? And what's the whole point of it? I mean, if we learn to express the needs of our particular individual soul and learn to communicate that in a language that can be heard by another, and then we receive nurturing, right now we're safe. Now we can trust. Now we're sheltered to a place where we can sleep, right? And what happens when we sleep, but we reconnect to that dream of oneness? Now, we don't typically remember it. It's like every morning we might wake up with some context of the dream, and sometimes we'll language that and work with that, and it's a beautiful thing. But also sometimes when we take the pen to the paper and transmit the dream through waking reality, we actually lose the magic of the dream too. So astrologically, I can speak of the trine from the 4th house to the 12th, right? Because I was safe and sheltered and I could trust and rest, and there was this family, right? Then I can access that dream of oneness. I mean, the goal of relationship in many ways is kind of a wet force. A wet force is one that connects, like mud brings the grains together, where dry separates them into individual sand pieces, yeah. So the fourth is actually a very wet place, and it's a place where we can often deeply suppress our own needs and the pain that we didn't have that nurturing or that safety or that trust in family. And you won't find a mystic that had that. So, to go back in a sense to enter that difficulty of learning to express some gratitude for the challenges of our life, both individually and family and nation, tribe, collectively, whatever it may be, right? That for me is one thing. I sit with so many people who are going through their own personal awakening process, and then, I applaud that because it's very difficult and isolating, but it tends to have been stimulated through some isolation in youth, through some feeling of familylessness, of abandonment. Yeah. I was in Maui some time ago, and at this amazing banyan tree in Lahaina. Many of you, I'm sure, know the tree that I speak of. And I was like, oh, well, that's the healing for abandonment. It's a banyan mint. It's like the banyan tree is such an amazing representation of the gift of family, and how, when one side of these gigantic, almost endless trees like can't support itself, suddenly, it'll sprout like a new being to just go down as like a support pole for itself, or you'll find other parts of the tree are kind of coming around to help other parts that are struggling. It's a very beautiful image of family. And it provides home for so many. So what does that mean to you, home? Does it mean now what it meant when you were young? What is the dream of home? Has that changed? Were you forced to abandon your dream of home, of safety, of trust, of family, as you've connected with other soul family, right? Did you redefine your own definition of what family means? Is it simply people who you share DNA with, or bloodline? It's interesting. I mean, in astrology, we typically look for like friends and circle in the 11th house, which itself is said to be blind, or quincunx, or averse to the fourth way. And how often is it that like our soul family, in a sense, is energetically misaligned in the eyes of our blood family? Has that idea of home, of family, been redefined for you? So an amazing thing about coming to an astrology conference like this, right? Like, a painful thing is I'm away from a place that feels like home, and I'm sitting in some weird hotel room. A beautiful thing is I'm connecting with family in a way that I really can't do. Like, we can exchange word and wisdom, and I learn so much here online, as I know you do too, and we can connect and support one another. And I have a lot of family in this regard that I have never met on earth, and maybe won't. But these conferences are so great because we can actually put a hug to that connection that we've made in the distance. I mean, what a beautiful thing in this dawning Aquarian age, that we can transmit live and through info beams and whatever, but there's something missing in that connection of two hearts beating in the ears of one another. What does family mean to you? What does home mean to you? What are some of the shadows that come alive for you in those words? How can light come forth from those shadows? Where can we find some gratitude, even in the pain points of our own family experience, or those relationships that we were never able to actualize that we always hoped we could? The ways perhaps for some of us, like father or mother, never actually lived up to the task of what we needed to feel safe and to have that trust and be in family, or those that we love so much who are now on the other side. And there's many places available in the pain regard when we say these words like family, safety, trust. So we need that shelter, we need that trust, we need that safety. I mean, how can this idea of family go wrong? It's interesting. Like, and I think this surprises some people. I actually see some of it in like Mars and Cancer, which is something that was happening at the time of my birth. That I really love professional sports. And I do a lot less of that than I used to. I used to be like a jersey wearing, you know, and it was really interesting. It was maybe the last one that I got into, but and when the Seattle Seahawks and I was living there started doing well, I became this like avid football fan, you know. And there were times where I'm sitting with like a crew of like jerseyed up friends, and we're in this family and we're wearing the colors and we're like literally yelling like kill him, and you know, and I catch myself, right? And I really loved when I started going through my own awakening, this experience of watching myself watch like sports, because it was like, wow, I'm seeing me play out parts of my being that I'm not necessarily stoked about, right? And we know this, like sports team, family, fans, right? Family will get into riots and melees, and you know, and why? I mean, I think a more extreme expression would be like the street gang. But feel into this, you know, this is all projection, clear, not something of my own experience, right? But I mean, what if somebody never had home, never had safety, never had trust, never had shelter, and connected to a crew of people who were in a way like in their own value set? Well, actually, maybe not. Maybe who just offered that safety, but maybe folks who offered safety by saying you had to betray your own heart or your own values, and you know, you can be with us and we'll protect you as long as you hate those people and want to kill them or whatever. You see what I'm saying? And this is a way where family can really go wrong. So family first, I think, can be a really beautiful thing, and it can be something that helps us connect to something outside of ourselves and return to that dream of oneness, that truth of oneness, or it can completely defy that wish, right? The eclipse that's coming up on Tuesday, it's member to a family that's called Saros Series 127 that was last around 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours before June solstice of 2001. And this was the eclipse that was, in a sense, the prenatal eclipse, if you would consider the birth of this thing that was the 9/11 attacks. So there was an eclipse of the very first degree of Cancer that in many regards I feel to be the most powerful astronomical happening of our day. And an interesting emanation of that was that sad, scary, tragic experience that changed the world. So here's an interesting term, homeland security, that in a way resonates with those terms I've invoked and asked us to sit with right now. Now, home and safety are very different visions and very different vibes and very different energetic crystals than those that I tap into when I say these words, homeland security. Interesting. And the nationalism and the kill him yelling at the TV screen that opened up in that strange happening, and that echoes today for sure. It's an interesting thing to watch, to be in the midst of, to be treading in that strange cold ocean. Is an odd and in a way, if we allow ourselves to kind of look from a higher perspective, fascinating thing to be involved in collectively in this time that we've chosen together to incarnate. So astrology sometimes allows this, and I like this about astrology, of that, like when we're just drowning in the tidal waves of feeling depression or fear or loneliness, or sometimes or you know, trauma, like deep trauma, that we can take this kind of higher perspective that gets us out of that tidal wave place. And it really does feel and kind of like of a rising up to look down on this world, you know. This eclipse is not about that. So to apply the craft of astrology is a wonderful thing, but you might know my principal mantra before a counseling session, and often in my teachings, is heart before chart. Because it's so easy for astrology to go into these airy intellectual realms, and that, to me, it's very strong fuel for the launch ship of astrology as a way out. We want astrology as a way in. We want to learn more of our soul and our path and our purpose, not only individually, but collectively. As a species, as a earthling for the globe, you know? Hearth is an interesting word that we've seen embraces this word art and holds this greatest word, heart. The hearth is the home, and it speaks of warmth and shelter and fuel to cook the food, help us ground in and feel in a trusting way safe. My invitation in this eclipse, right? And most of us won't see it. Let me show you where on earth this eclipse can be seen. I mean, some people, devoted astronauts, will head down south to South America to see this eclipse. Some of you live down there. It's a blessing to see a total solar eclipse. I was gifted with my first experience in August of 2017. This is moonblink.info/eclipse/search, by the way, which is like the best eclipse place online as far as I'm concerned. This July 2nd, 2019 eclipse, this is the shadow path that the moon will cast on the earth, moving west to east from the Big Drink and eventually through Chile and Argentina. You know, it's very interesting. This is a very literal expression of eclipse, and it was some weeks ago, actually not that long, but Argentina had a countrywide blackout, right, for almost an entire day. And much of Paraguay and Uruguay, which obviously aren't on the path of totality for this eclipse, but certainly experienced depth of eclipse. Most of South America, everywhere in the shaded region, will see the eclipse in some partiality and on this line in totality. A total eclipse of the electric grid. Now dig how that wants us to get out. Dig how that actually invokes the need for trust and community and neighbors and safety and, you know, coming together. So that is, in a sense, one of the beautiful things of the patriotism and nationalism. But if it happens unconsciously, it is a very separative force, isn't it? Especially if it's not happening in truth. So there's interesting things that are coming with this next beat of the shadow heart that last was heard in 2001. There's interesting things like the tensions of the US and Iran that are alive right now. For me, a very interesting thing in the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth are having their case heard by a grand jury this year. And as grand juries go, I mean, most of us won't know when the proceedings are happening or where, but most people don't even know that that's happening at all. And that's an interesting thing to explore. It's an interesting thing to explore how many of us basically have given unconscious, silent consent to have our emails read and all of our stuff listened to, and that because we feel that that will help keep us safe from some invisible force, whatever, you know. So how has home, family, safety, trust, shelter been eclipsed for you over the course of these last 18 years since the world significantly changed with that 2001 event? And how have you reacted to it? And how might you feel that what we were told or what we chose to believe about that thing might not actually be the truth? And what in us have we suppressed or hidden from? What in us have we chosen to trap in the shell of the crab, as sometimes we say? Cancer is a very tender and feeling place, but because that's not so honored or promoted, or because it can be the actual invitation for pain, we learn, you know, in a way untruthfully, in a way not. We can shell ourselves up. But a very beautiful thing about the hermit crab, at least, is that it can change shells. Now, it must be brave to do so. And it's actually a really wonderful meditation and engagement to learn some of the deeper mysteries of the Cancer mystery school, is to watch hermit crabs change shells. It's a really interesting process. You know, that's one thing I would say would be a cool magic for this coming eclipse. I'll give you a ceremony you can do wherever you are at the moment of the eclipse. And again, It is July 2nd, Tuesday, 3:16 p.m. Eastern, 12:16 p.m. Pacific. You know your time zone conversion. That's probably the best I can do with it right now. Is in that moment of time, whether you can see the eclipse or not, if the sun is in the sky, look to the sun and know the moon is very close. That it is so close that it is tracing a shadow path on the earth somewhere. And in this case, as we saw in South America, but they are there. The moon is there, right? In the northern hemisphere, if you can't see the eclipse, the moon is slightly below the sun. In the southern hemisphere, if you can't see the eclipse, it's slightly above the sun. It might be nighttime where you live at the time. But either way, we can turn our energy to that place. You know, learn, if you can see the sun, just go there. If you can't, learn where the sun is below the ground for you and give your energy there, or tune into the center of the earth, which is in this alignment of the three parts, right? Earth, moon, sun. And look into the shadow. But know you're doing this to find light. Don't get trapped down there. That's not the point. It's about harnessing light. But look at where maybe you have some scar tissue that you've been holding on to, protecting, whether on an individual thing, especially again, tuned to these themes of family, trust, safety, shelter. Look at how perhaps we suppress so much of ourselves through our stress, through our pain, through our hurt in the past, and reclaim your authentic expression, reclaim your authentic self. And maybe it's time for us to realign and redefine the meanings that we wish for these words: home, family, safety, trust, shelter, feelings, to be. You know, sometimes it's like giving up on a dream that can't happen, that allows the true dream to open up for us. So I'll say one more thing, because we're going to go and be with Astro Family and get up on, well, I won't ever get on the roof of a hotel, by the way, if it's not allowed, but get out in the grass and see the sky and connect to that great family, that host of stars who love us. Mercury's about to retrograde, bringing us back a bit. Mercury's with Mars and Leo at this eclipse. Very strong things are happening with Saturn, the South Node, and Pluto. That's where the lunar eclipse will be on July 16th. And I think I'll find some time to record another bit about that. I started very technically today. I didn't want to do that. And I'm glad that I've actually kind of gotten away from the chart a little bit more into the heart. And hopefully that speaks more to you. Moon will conjoin Venus tomorrow on July 1st. And as the last moon, Venus is a morning star we can see in this particular cycle. And it invokes the beginning of her cycle in October in the sign of Scorpio. And there's a more deep, authentic emotional experience and expression for the deeper empowerment of soul gnosis involved here. And in the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, where I got my start, we look at this particular Moon-Venus conjunction. I suggest we wake up early and look at this particular Moon-Venus conjunction tomorrow morning before sunrise as a time to clean the clutter around the root chakra. Well, what is that? But fear of being safe. Do you see this agreement? It happened in the sign of Gemini, where we are being asked to look from many perspectives. Let me just say at last that shadow work is not only about going into these suppressed negative things or hiding away parts of ourselves that we don't like. We hide some of our greatest power and beauty and light in the shadow. And if we are willing to have a look, we can harness some of the greatest gems of self. And may that be the way for me and for you and for all of us on this powerful portal of a total solar eclipse that comes our way very soon, July 2nd. 3:16 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for spending some time with me here today, friends. You can find me at GeminiBrett.com. There's a bunch of free teachings up there. Soon I'll be posting links to an eclipse webinar and workshop I recently gave for Kepler College, but for now you can go over to their site, Kepler, Kepler, college.org, and look at recent offerings, and you can find my Joy and Saros at the Turning of the Ages eclipse webinar, which was free, and then also pay a very small fee to download the 3.5 hour eclipse workshop I gave for Kepler College last week. That's called Enter the Dragon. Regardless, this is something that we are all doing together, and I'm glad that I have you at my energetic side, you beautiful being who is here tuned to your own personal path of feeling, healing, knowing, and growing. And it starts with feeling, friends. And that's why every monkey suit comes equipped with a heart, and why truthfully this earth can be so hard, but it certainly doesn't have to be. Let's bring more light from the shadow and show in our own experience and expression and desire and dream what we wish for family and home and safety and shelter and trust, and a deep expression where we can be authentically alive in our own feelings. What do we wish those dreams to be, and how are we the agents of their actualization? We shall find out. See you in space, friends. Love and planets to you.